In a minute or two, we're going to ask Dr. Laura Haynes to come and present to us, and she's going to be introduced by Andrea Williams from the United Kingdom. But before we do that, perhaps we could just have a look at a video.
50 years after the LGBTQ Americans took to the streets outside of New York's Stonewall Inn to fight against harassment and hate, we take pride in the progress we have forged together. Our founders, in their great wisdom, wrote in our beautiful preamble of the blessings of liberty, which were to be the birthright of all Americans, to bring our nation closer to the founding promise of liberty and justice for all. We today pass the Equality Act and finally fully end discrimination against LGBTQ Americans.
Hi, my name is Matthew Grech, and I am standing just outside the US Embassy in London to discuss what is a very controversial bill that was proposed in the United States Congress in 2019. I'm going to be chatting with friends from Malta, from the United Kingdom, and from the United States. Join me now.
On Friday, the House of Representatives passed legislation that would extend certain civil rights protections to the LGBTQ community. The Equality Act would modify the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in a variety of public sectors, including housing, education, employment, and public obligations. It passed through the House in a 236 to 173 vote. House Democrats have pushed for the bill as a way to protect LGBTQ people in the more than 24 states that still allow them to be legally evicted, fired, or denied services based on gender identity and sexual orientation. But Republicans criticized the measure in a spirited debate before the vote, alleging the bill would threaten freedom of religion, speech, and women's rights. The bill is not expected to pass through the Republican-held Senate in its current form, which the White House has said it's opposed to.
The concern we have about the Equality Act USA 2019, it's just gone through Congress in the US. It's a bill that includes a clause to ban so-called conversion therapy across the United States. And it's very biased. It's saying it's discriminatory, that it would increase the chance of suicide among LGBTQ people and make them feel like second-class citizens.
We are protesting the Equality Act that the House of Representatives in the United States has just passed, which would basically kill off religious freedoms, freedoms to get out of LGBT world in terms of professional stuff. It will destroy women's sports. It's a huge, huge game changer for the worse. So I'm delighted that Mike Davidson and his group is pushing back, and I'm really excited to be here.
What do you think is the end goal of those who are coming up with all of these schemes?
Their aim is to ban all therapeutic work with people with unwanted same-sex attraction and also gender confusion, and also aim really, as in California, at the churches and religious communities that would offer pastoral care accompanying people with unwanted same-sex attraction or coming out of LGBT lifestyles.
Many folks understand about the LGBT, kind of the rainbow flag, etc. But there are many other sexual minorities coming out now too, and Stonewall and the human rights, some of these groups ignore them because they would give them a bad press, but they are very much coming out now.
How are these sexual minorities affecting the future of what we know as family?
Well, one of the main methods of cultural Marxism, because that's really what we're talking about here, is to distance parents from children. So the sexualization of children via state-sponsored sex ed, that's huge.
The biggest groups would be people like Human Rights Campaign in the US and ILGA, and they've been lobbying all the way up to the UN, actually.
So they have a very powerful representation and definitely a very influential platform. What is the future looking like for countries all over the world? What kind of impact could this have?
Of course, the US can't have a direct impact, it can't legislate in other countries, but it has massive moral influence. It's a superpower. It represents Western culture and Western freedoms. And so if the US were to pass this law sometime in the future, maybe at the time of the next election, if there was a Democratic government, all other countries in the Western world would be influenced and would say, we should pass this law. And there would be pressure from American NGOs. And it would also go into the developing world in countries strongly influenced by the US.
Are you an American citizen yourself?
I am indeed.
So this is getting very serious because in Malta, we talk about the fact that the victims, those who were once victims, seem to have become the aggressors in society. How is this bill a threat to the future of our children?
Well, certainly in the States, and actually globally, because in many ways the U.S. is a leader for good and ill, it would force the LGBT minority, the rights issue, on everyone, regardless. Basically, LGBT would become the equivalent of black. So gay is the new black. If this goes through, then in terms of the U.S. sponsoring various global groups, they would have to sign on. So that's how it would, and the embassies, all that the U.S. does internationally would be impacted.
Would you agree with me that it is actually individuals who have left the homosexual lifestyle that are being treated as second-class citizens, that are actually experiencing real discrimination and hatred? Do they have any representation? Are they getting the voice that they deserve?
I think the answer to that is no, and more of them need to become public and understand what's going on. We would encourage, if any of you are watching, to share the letter that we've put up online. I think in America some are agitating already and have spoken up, but there needs to be much more awareness that this Equality Act actually contains a ban on so-called conversion therapy. Most of the press has not reported this.
Tell me a little bit about your experience in Malta. We know that conversion practices have been deemed as illegal in Malta, and that has had an impact on people who have chosen to see things differently than maybe what the mainstream media would have us think. So what has it been like for you as an ex-LGBT individual?
Well, yes, I did come out recently in public as an ex-lesbian, and when my testimony came out, I got a lot of backlash, and I was bullied like on social media. It was I received a lot of hatred for it, and it just seems like I cannot express my life and my views because of this thing that's coming on from the LGBT side that is. That's just they want to silence us, and so we have been also threatened with fines and also jail time from the government because of these laws that are passing, and we are trying to fight for our freedom, the freedom to express ourselves and the freedom to be honest with everyone and to be able to speak in public.
Maybe the mainstream media at this point would be saying that, we need to bring an end to LGBT discrimination, and that your message would be harming individuals who are still coming out, and therefore it is right for you to be silenced. How would you respond to this?
Well, I think that's the exact opposite of equality, because if we're equal, you get to say your part and I get to say my part. So to tell me that someone else's story and experience is more important than mine, that's not equality.
What brought this change about?
The change in my life was actually Jesus Christ. When I met the true person of Jesus Christ, I was encouraged. I was changed from the inside, and it's an experience that I could never deny. And it's such a shame that people that are in government and in authority, they want to silence me and they want to take away my story and my experience. And I could never deny this.
Do you seriously think that the church is prepared to fight this battle?
The answer is no, and they need to be much better informed and much better prepared.
We look forward to see an uprising and just people speaking up all over the world.
Pleasure to be with you this morning, and this is the uprising. This is the winning. This is what it looks like. I don't know. I think because many of you are in this world entirely, and I am not. I'm a lawyer by background. I run Christian Concern and the Christian Legal Centre. But I think many of you that are in this world sort of are so totally immersed. And I want to stand here and say to you that this is an extraordinary historical meeting. It's a meeting that builds. Every time you meet together, I see more energy, more focus, more winning. And what I see before me is a room full of people who have come from real places of pain and hurt, but then into healing. I see specialists and specialists with extraordinary knowledge. And we saw that borne out this morning, with that extraordinary presentation from David Pickup and Robert Vazzo. Just to actually see that working out was incredible. That's expertise that is lived expertise. And I am here to introduce Dr. Laura Haynes. This is an extraordinary woman who has lived her life in this world. So how she comes to you today is a woman who has lived out experience and in a sense is part of the leadership of this movement, so that those of us who want to learn and also who are to continue this work and to build this work may learn from someone with the lived experience of over 40 years in clinical practice. She's an author, she reviews peer-reviewed journals, she serves as chair of research and legislative policy for the National Task Force for Therapy Equality, consultant for the American College of Pediatricians, and she's a member of the research committee for the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity, the Narth Institute. She also serves the IFTCC, and she is on the General Board on the Science and Research Council as the USA representative. She's a former regional president of the Christian Association for Psychological Studies. I think I should just shout out there that there are so many of us here that are Christian, and we heard from Kylie, didn't we, of the transformative power of Jesus Christ. And so many of us believe that, and so many, we even heard this morning, are working in this field motivated by faith. And that's a wonderful coalescing of really excellent practice and expertise and the faith and transformation that Jesus can bring. But this is just, it's just a privilege to introduce you today, and also to just encourage you to keep on pressing on and keep on imparting this knowledge, because in many ways, you said to me last night that you were retired, but retired into a really important season of life where all that lived knowledge informs us so that we might press on in the task, because this is what will change and transform the culture. So over to Laura.
Everyone should have the right to walk away from feelings and experiences and practices sexually that don't work for them and have support to do so. Here are 4 common reasons why people want to resolve their unwanted same-sex attractions, as expressed by Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, Jr., originator of reintegrative therapy. Some men and women adopted a gay identity and had gay experiences, but they ultimately found it unfulfilling for themselves. They, not the state or government, should decide their sexuality. A therapy ban promoted by politicians and gay activists in professional organizations demands they must stay gay, micromanaging their sexuality for them. The Royal College of Psychiatrists wants to forbid them treatment because the college says their dissatisfaction with their sexuality is not a disorder. The college says the provision of any intervention purporting to treat something that is not a disorder is wholly unethical. Really? Marital dissatisfaction is not a mental disorder. Does the Royal College of Psychiatrists consider marriage counseling unethical? How about counseling for bereavement or employment dissatisfaction? 10 UK professional organizations, including the Royal College itself, admit in a conjoint statement that they approve of treatment for matters that are not disorders. Quote, people visit therapists for all sorts of different reasons. Bereavement, employment, or relationship difficulties are just some of the common reasons why people seek specialist support. Dissatisfaction, not only disorder, is an ethical basis for counseling. People have the right to walk away from sexual experiences they found unfulfilling and to have help to do so. No one should take that right away from them. Reason for therapy number 2, sexual abuse or other trauma. Some individuals were sexually abused when they were young, resulting in conflict, confusion, and unwanted same-sex attractions that they wish to resolve. They're not alone. In a statement in 2014, the American Psychological Association agreed that indeed some people with unwanted same-sex attractions may have developed those attractions as the result of childhood sexual abuse. The APA Handbook of Sexuality and Psychology says same-sex attraction is not simply biologically caused like skin color. Psychological influences are always present, and childhood sexual abuse may lead to having same-sex partners for some. It based this conclusion on its review of research that included a 30-year study of documented cases of childhood sexual abuse. This is the APA Handbook of Sexuality and Psychology, published in 2014 by the American Psychological Association. It comes in 2 volumes. This is my copy. The American Psychological Association, in the series preface to this handbook, gives this handbook its imprimatur, or its approval, officially, and it declares it to be authoritative. So there is no question the American Psychological Association considers the APA Handbook of Sexuality and Psychology authoritative. Here is the paragraph where the APA Handbook praises the rigor of the 30-year study of documented cases of childhood sexual abuse. The study found that men with documented histories of childhood sexual abuse were 6.75 times more likely to have a same-sex partner. The effect in women was a statistical trend. The APA Handbook says there are, quote, associative and potentially causal links between childhood sexual abuse and having same-sex partners. Of course, not everyone who is gay was sexually abused, and not everyone who was sexually abused becomes gay. And some people who had same-sex experiences experienced sexual abuse after they experienced their first same-sex experiences. But some people do feel their same-sex attractions or behavior were forced on them by childhood sexual abuse. Some feel trauma from other sources, such as family relationships or peer bullying, also contributed to their same-sex attraction and behavior. The APA Handbook says there are psychoanalytic causes of same-sex sexuality. This means family relationships as the child experienced them from the child's experience may influence sexual attraction or behavior. The handbook says biological explanations, however, do not entirely explain sexual orientation. Psychoanalytic contingencies or factors are evident as main effects, meaning standalone causes all in and of themselves, or in interaction with biological factors. A joint program of research by psychoanalysts and biologically oriented scientists may prove fruitful. A recent gene study supports this APA handbook conclusion. It studied the genes of nearly 500,000 people and definitively concluded genes do not make someone gay. Same-sex sexuality mostly develops from a person's experiences in their environment. Same-sex sexuality develops from biological influences, from psychological influences that may include trauma, and it can change. Like other complex human traits, therapists help people diminish and change every day. Affirming may fail to look beneath the surface and treat trauma. Elizabeth Wanning, co-founder of the Christian Equipped to Love ministry in California, told California senators she lived openly as a lesbian while in seminary and as a pastor advanced the gay-affirming church movement. But a perspective-altering encounter with Jesus, in addition to unaddressed sexual abuse as a child and young adult, pressed Wanning into therapy. She said, "None of the secular counseling I received removed the trauma of those experiences. By affirming my sexuality as a lesbian, that counseling never delved under the surface of judgments and agreements that empowered the comfort I felt in the arms of another woman. My faith did." By blocking access to goods and services that question sexuality, Wanning told senators, women with #MeToo experiences such as mine may never find resolution. Neglecting to treat trauma that led to same-sex attraction or behavior can result in persisting psychological trauma and disorders, mental health disparities, increased risk for suicide. Who is causing mental health disparities again? Victims of same-sex feelings or behaviors caused by trauma should have the right to heal. Reason for therapy number 3, personal beliefs. There are many people whose ethics and beliefs tell them they were created heterosexual. Everyone's personal beliefs and decisions should be respected as their right. For example, many Jews, Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims believe they were created heterosexual. Respect for the tenet of these beliefs means these individuals have the freedom to pursue the life and goals they choose for themselves. The Royal College of Psychiatrists says, the college holds the view that lesbian, gay, and bisexual people have exactly similar rights and responsibilities as all other citizens. This includes freedom to practice a religion. Some desire therapy or faith-based resources and help to love according to their faith, to practice their religion. The Faith and Sexuality Survey 2018 said for all ages, people looked for advice from their faith leader, 47%. Faith Healing Ministries, 20%, and their youth leader, 14%. In the United Kingdom, the National LGBT Survey labeled faith organization or group as the #1 provider by far of so-called, quote, conversion therapy, end quote, 51%, and parent, guardian, or other family member as the 3rd greatest provider because they practice their religious beliefs, 16%. Will politicians target clergy, religious organizations, and families for criminalization? Will they take children from parents or guardians? These acts are already being attempted or done in some places in the United States and Canada. This would be a huge overreach by the state. Population-based studies that are rigorous and robust, and studies conducted by a team of gay-affirming researchers and change-affirming researchers together, have found that LGBT people who live according to their traditional religions are as happy, mentally healthy, satisfied with life, and flourishing as those of liberal religions or no religion. I want you to see there are several references for this. Religion is associated with happiness for LGBT people who live according to their traditional religions. Therapy bans are attacks on religion. No one should take away anyone's freedom and right to live and love according to their faith and beliefs that bring them happiness. Politicians should not go after pastors, churches, and families. Reason for therapy number 4, save marriage and family. Some who experience same-sex attraction are in opposite-sex relationships with a spouse and children they love, and they want help not to stray or be unfaithful in order to save their family and be full-time moms and dads. Under a therapy ban, there will be marriages and families that can't be saved. If a middle-aged 40-year-old mother of 3 says to a therapist, "I love my husband and children, but recently I felt attracted to someone else. Please help me decrease my attraction to the other person." And if the other person is a man, a therapist can help her. But if the other person is a woman, a therapy ban requires the therapist to refuse. Could she even talk to her pastor or family member for help? Do same-sex attracted people in relationships with the opposite sex represent a very common situation? And are they capable of change? The Royal College of Psychiatrists said, nevertheless, sexual orientation for most people seems to be set around a point that is largely heterosexual or homosexual. This seems to say same-sex sexuality is largely exclusively homosexual, not bisexual, fixed and does not change, set around having same-sex relationships. So LGBTQ experiences are who someone is and cannot change. Is this true? The American Psychological Association says, and international research shows, sexual attraction, behavior, and orientation identity, all 3, change for both adolescents and adults. The APA Handbook states, research on sexual minorities has long documented that many recall having undergone notable shifts in their patterns of sexual attractions, behaviors, or orientation identities over time. Although change in adolescence and emerging adulthood is understandable, change in adulthood contradicts the prevailing view of consistency in sexual orientation. Over the course of life, individuals experience the following: changes or fluctuations in sexual attractions, behaviors, and romantic partnerships. I invite you to notice in the references here within the APA Handbook a who's who of experts in sexual orientation, agreeing that same-sex attraction often changes or shifts. The American Psychological Association also says, and international research also shows, most people who experience same-sex attraction also experience equal or greater opposite-sex attraction. The APA Handbook says, hence, directly contrary to the conventional wisdom, individuals with non-exclusive patterns of attraction are indisputably the norm, and those with exclusive same-sex attractions are the exception. This pattern has been found internationally. Rigorous research has found, this is from a study by Sabin Williams, Joyner, and Rieger, the second largest identity group, mostly heterosexual, was larger than all other non-heterosexual identities combined. Over time, more bisexual and mostly heterosexual identified young adults of both sexes moved toward heterosexuality than toward homosexuality. So we know they can change toward heterosexuality. Both sex-attracted spouses in opposite-sex relationships are common. The definitive document, Office of National Statistics, Sexual Orientation, UK 2017, found that about a quarter of bisexuals in the United Kingdom are married, mostly to the opposite sex. Many same-sex attracted people are in opposite-sex relationships because they prefer to be. If therapy is criminalized, there will be marriages and families that can't be saved. People who are looking for change should have the freedom and the same rights as everyone else to leave sexual practices and experiences that are unfulfilling for them, to heal feelings and behaviors caused by trauma, to live and love according to their faith that brings them happiness, to save their marriage and family. No one should take these rights and freedoms away from them. The IFTCC response to the Faith and Sexuality Survey says that, chillingly, 33% of respondents turned to no one for advice. Is this to be the only option left for people who want to prefer their heterosexual attractions to their same-sex attractions? A law that takes away people's freedoms and rights to pursue the sexual orientation of their choice, to love who they want, and identify as they choose, and live consistently with their faith, harms and stigmatizes them. Here are more examples of harms that will come from censoring therapy. Attraction to engage in some illegal sexual behaviors could not be treated. Illegal behaviors such as sexual behavior with children, might be addressed depending on how the law is stated. But the attraction to engage in those behaviors could be treated only if the behaviors are directed toward opposite sex, not same-sex victims. For example, therapists could help a man change his sexual attraction if he desires 5-year-old girls, but not 5-year-old boys. This is dangerous. A therapy ban might even forbid helping someone change same-sex behavior unless it is illegal. If a law recognizes therapy can change illegal same-sex behavior and allows it, will it allow this change for everyone? Sexual politics micromanages people's sexual behavior. Therapists will be required to discriminate against clients based on sexual orientation. Many kinds of symptoms and recognized disorders, from unwanted emotional and sexual ties that a sexual abuse victim may experience toward an abuser, to the desire to have sex with minors, to compulsive sexual thoughts, to pornography addiction, to sexual addiction, and more, could be treated only if directed toward the opposite, not same sex. Everyone should have the right to walk away from sexual practices and experiences that don't work for them and should have support to do so. Safe and effective therapy, opponents of change-allowing therapy, regularly show ignorance of what we do and wildly misrepresent it. Opponents frequently equate, quote, conversion therapy, end quote, with reparative therapy or reintegrative therapy, which are specific trademarked therapies in the United States. Conversion therapy is an ill-defined term opponents use to mix everything together that they want. Therapists, pastors, grandma. It is so ill-defined that it is questionable whether therapists would clearly know what they are not supposed to do so they can comply. If a therapist does not try to change a client's sexual orientation, but it changes during therapy, could the therapist be in danger? Reintegrative therapy is a specific therapy that, as I said, is trademarked in the United States by the Office of Trademarks, that does trademarks. It's a form of trauma treatment that uses evidence-based methods. It can be widely applied for many kinds of trauma experiences, and it takes no position on sexual orientation. When applied to men presenting with same-sex attractions they wish to explore, they have found male clients with same-sex attractions have reported decreases in their same-sex attractions, and for some clients, increases in their heterosexual attractions as a byproduct of its use. And more can be learned about reintegrative therapy at reintegrativetherapy.com. Professional organizations support change-allowing therapy. There is no professional consensus about change-allowing therapy. Oppositional professional guilds regularly misrepresent what change-allowing therapists do. I want to go back to that a minute. I want to point out that, if I can find my organizations, I just want to point out that one of these organizations is the International Federation of Catholic Medical Associations, a truly global organization of about 65 Catholic medical associations around the world. Oppositional professional guilds regularly misrepresent what change-allowing therapists do. Their statements are often based on outdated scientific view that same-sex sexuality is inborn, primarily exclusively homosexual, and cannot change, are based on a biased and unscientific view of LGBTQ people in traditional religions, are typically talking points of gay activist professionals who do not dialogue with clinicians or researchers of change-allowing therapists. They show ignorance of actual common reasons people want change. They make allegations of harm based on ignorance of current methods, and they have no science that meets standards to back their allegations of harm. The United Kingdom documents opposing change-allowing therapy frequently cite the American Psychological Association, or APA, Task Force report of 2009. The APA Task Force chair refused expert change-allowing clinicians and researchers who offered to serve on the task force and chose LGBT professionals who were already committed to the conclusions of the task force based on political or philosophical grounds. I know this is true. I'm a first-hand eyewitness because I wrote to Dr. Judith Glassgold, the chair of the APA Task Force report, along with other of my colleagues, and I asked her to include actual experts who are clinicians and researchers in change-allowing therapy. And I, along with other of my colleagues, received a personal letter from Dr. Glassgold refusing. Many take their biased report and further distort it. The APA Task Force report, the Smith article in the United Kingdom, and the International Federation for Therapeutic and Counseling Choice actually agree on something. They all agree that change-allowing therapy today uses non-aversive methods. Testimonies of aversive methods have been documented to be fraudulent and reported to the United States Federal Trade Commission. The APA Task Force found no valid causal evidence of harm and did not declare change-allowing therapy unethical. I have been a member of the American Psychological Association for 40 years. I have never been kicked out of the organization. Actually, the APA Task Force said it had no scientific evidence that gay affirmative therapy is safe or effective. And recent research reviews say LGBT affirmative therapy still has many limitations. Yet, the task force gave gay affirmative therapy a pass and recommended it. The British Psychological Association or Society said there is limited empirical support for affirmative practice. Note well, the American Psychological Association and the British Psychological Society are not opposed to therapy they believe lacks scientific evidence of effectiveness. They accepted affirmative therapy that they said lacks such evidence. The claim that they oppose change-allowing therapy for supposedly lacking such evidence is dishonest. The APA Task Force report said, studies claiming to show negative outcomes of change-allowing therapy did not meet scientific standards. No conclusions can be drawn from them. There continues to be no research that meets scientific standards and shows change-allowing therapy to be harmful. The APA Task Force report said it was based on one-sided, anecdotal, not scientific evidence, and its conclusion is tentative. The 2018 Faith and Sexuality Survey found some respondents benefited from change-allowing therapy. The IFTCC critique by Walter Schum and John Nolan pointed out 13 respondents reported they changed sexual orientation completely through therapy, and 20% said it worked for a while. That could help some hold their family together long enough to get their children raised. And this is on their biased sample of participants. The FSS is hardly a study of conversion therapy in youth. The FSS did not study children or adolescents under age 16. It simply has nothing to say about them. 72 of respondents were born before 1984. The FSS is not a study of youth. Any respondents who were ages 16 or 17 in 2018 were unlikely to have experienced conversion therapy because professional organizations banned each other from it in 2014. The Faith and Sexuality Survey cannot link mental health problems to therapy. More FSS respondents said they had mental health problems than said their mental health problems resulted from therapy. The FSS did not compare respondents' mental health problems before and after therapy. Therefore, it cannot say whether their mental health problems changed through therapy. To scientifically prove the sexual orientation change efforts, or SOCI, is generally harmful, one would have to prove all of the following. The number of clients who report harm from SOCI exceeds those who report benefits. The negative mental and physical health indicators among those who have undergone SOCI exceed those among people who have undergone alternative gay-affirming therapy, had no therapy at all, or had therapy or counseling for other conditions. There simply is no scientific evidence to prove each of these points. A survey of consumers of change-allowing therapy in the United States shows clients experience these benefits. They decreased depression, frequency and intensity of homosexual thoughts. They increased self-acceptance, self-understanding, self-esteem, personal power, emotional stability, spirituality, satisfying relationships, relationships with church, God, and family, trust in the opposite sex, and interest in heterosexual dating. Over a century of research, including studies published in peer-reviewed journals of the American Psychological Association by APA members, have found when the therapy is done right, it is effective. APA presidents have provided successful change-allowing therapy and opposed bans. Here's a research review from 2000 to 2018 by Peter Sprigg. Here's a research review through 2009. It covers 5 meta-research reviews. And here's the reference for the APA presidents who have conducted successful change-allowing therapy and opposed bans. I told legislators, you may not like someone's view on same-sex sexuality, and a view that leads to true happiness for others may not work for you or your family member, but should they have their freedoms and livelihoods, potentially their property and children, taken away from them? Lawmakers should acknowledge divergent paths and celebrate freedom. Here are testimonies of people who made real change and found true joy through professional therapy or faith-based services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was so helpful. So just to remind you that the workshops will meet from 2 until 3:30, and then there'll be a coffee break. But Crystal has some announcements to make.
First of all, the PowerPoint presentations of both talks this morning about image transformation therapy and now of the right to protect the right for therapy, you should have received them in my last mail that I sent out on Tuesday, the complete PowerPoints, which I think are very useful to look up all those many references. If you haven't received it, please send an email to conference@iftcc.org. I'm happy to send it to you so that you have these important informations at home. Second point, please, anybody of you who needs the shuttle service tomorrow, go to the reception now during the lunchtime, because they need to fix the times when the shuttle will leave tomorrow. And Mike already said everything about the workshops. You will find the rooms where the workshops will be in outside on the board. There will be those 3 rooms here on this area, and otherwise for the smaller workshops there will be houses, so I think you will find it.
Just one last thing to say. All of these sessions, as you know, are being live broadcast, so they are available on IFTCC Facebook page, but they will then be once again re-edited to make sure that they are well done, and they will then be re-uploaded onto YouTube, and you may have access to them, embed them, and do as you please within the copyright framework of that, but they will be widely available and certainly accessible from the IFTCC website. Thank you very much and enjoy your lunch.